We've been looking at a number of wines from this producer, Robert Weil, and this is his 2021 Rheingau Riesling Spatlese. So most of the wines that we have looked at have been from their highly reputed vineyards, particularly from the Gräfenberg, their Erste Lage, but also from their two Erste Lage, Klosterberg and Turmberg. But this, I believe, is a wine made from fruit picked slightly earlier, but at Spatlese level, from all three vineyards and combined, and may possibly include fruit from elsewhere in the Rheingau, because it's not got that Kedrick designation, Kedrick being the town that the estate is based in. So Spatlese meaning late harvest, so grapes picked at above normal ripeness, Kabinett being the level below that on the quality level, being grapes picked at full ripeness, and above that Auslese, which is a selection of, so you're starting to look at wines with a degree of botrytis in the fruit at that stage. So this should be late harvested but not botrytised fruit, not rotten fruit, giving sort of very sweet wines. When Weingut Robert Weil make their sweeter wines, they ferment them entirely in stainless steel and they age them in stainless steel so as not to give too much richness and body to them, whereas their dry wines they'll ferment and age in large oak foudre. The entire of the production here is trying to be pretty minimal intervention. They were one of the early adopters of sustainable vineyard practices in the Rheingau. So their vineyards are, for instance, they use no herbicides or fungicides at all. There's no fertilizers applied, any natural treatments. They're into grassing down between the rows and that sort of thing. So there's a very careful environmental management going on there. The fruit is all hand-picked because it's a steep vineyard, so you have to. Fermentation goes on where possible with the natural yeasts that come into the winery with the fruit, or are already established in the winery, fermenting away. As much as possible, the work in the winery is done with gravity. So they're trying not to intervene and trying to maintain the purity of the fruit right into the final wine there. So let's have a look at this wine, shall we? First thing to say, I mean, there's a level at which you can look at it where it's almost water white. I can see a sort of a greenish hint to it, but there's very little colour or body to it. Swirling it, it's not creating tears. It's only 9% alcohol, although I would imagine it has a certain degree of residual sugar, so that would give it some body, but it's really not sticking to the glass at all. So let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? The aromas are delicate, but they're very pretty. I mean, there is an underlying liminess. It's a Riesling from Germany, so that's what I'd be expected. But actually what's really showing is a blossom and a minerality. There's a real perfume here. I mean, initially I'm thinking lime flower, but actually it's quite a powerful perfume, and almost getting to a stage where there's an almost sort of slightly sickly note of lilies there, or something like that. But perhaps an underlying minerality. Other notes, sort of apple, sort of slightly green apple skin note. There's a freshness. There's an almost slightly sherbety zip to the whole thing, actually, on the top of the aromas. So let's have a taste, shall we? Tasting that, and this shape of glass for sweeter Rieslings, I spread that right across my tongue, and the sweetness is very apparent from the start. The sweetness is nice and clean. I mean, I'm assuming this is a wine that will have been produced with a stock fermentation, so the fermentation isn't allowed to complete, and that means that because of the way that fermentation goes on, most of the sweetness will be the more sweet fresh style of sugar, that is fructose. It gives a lighter lifted style than cheaper styles of wine where sweetness is back blended into the wine, which is not uncommon with large scale blends in Germany. The wine is very light bodied. There's a freshness. It's at the front of the mouth. The freshness is not particularly continuing later on into the palate, although actually yes, there is a little bit of acidity just at the back palate picking up at the end. The flavours are, again, it's high-toned lime. There's quite sharp green apple notes, but there's a richness. There's starting to develop a little bit of a sort of a peach, becoming riper, yellow peach sort of note there. Heading towards an almost slightly honeyed note. There's a very slightly oily, rounded texture to the wine, but as I say, it's light-bodied, so it's not full and rich, but there is a sort of a smooth, slightly slippery texture there that I'd say was oily. The flavours last reasonably well, although they're not as persistent as the single vineyard wines were showing. And actually this is where the contrast is with wines like the Klosterberg and the Turmberg, which when they're made trocken have more richness anyway because of the oak fermentation, but they also had a sort of quite a mineral saline note. And I'm really realising that more now I'm tasting this, where I'm not seeing that. So yes, a simple, straightforward wine with nice clean fruit, good clean sweetness. There's a balance, there's sufficient freshness to keep the wine lively to the end. An interesting wine, and at the right price, a very enjoyable drink. Not necessarily one for putting in the cellar for 20 years, but I should imagine would age for 5 or 6 years quite happily without a problem. And in fact, those peachy flavours that are starting to develop would probably come out of the wine to a greater extent. The other lovely thing about these is that it has at 9% alcohol. You don't quite get the sort of the alcoholic after effects that you do with some other wines, so it's easier to drink sometimes. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this is of use, of interest to you. Do please follow our channel, do like and share the videos, and I really hope you'll join us again. Bye now.